Hey Swell, hope everyone is having a great week. This is Karan Dev on the Think Tank Swellcast. My guest today is one of the most eminent people in public life in India. His name is Jay Panda and he is the National Vice President and spokesperson of the world's largest political party, the Bharatiya Janata Party or BJP. He's been a 4-time Member of Parliament, elected twice each to the lower house, which is called the Lok Sabha, and the upper house, which is called the Rajya Sabha. As a parliamentarian, he's been a member of several important committees like the Parliamentary Standing Committees on Finance, Home, Energy, Urban Development and the Consultative Committee for the Ministry of Finance. He's also conceptualized and spearheaded several initiatives. The most prominent among them is the Citizens Alliance Against Malnutrition, which is an advocacy group including many parliamentarians across parties, civil society activists, and non-governmental organizations. In addition to everything I just mentioned, he is also a leading columnist and frequently features on headline debates on television. Mr. Panda, it's great to have you with us on Swell, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation. I want to start this off by asking you, after a decade of the Congress-led UPA government from 2004 to 14, the Narendra Modi-led BJP came into power with a sweeping majority in the year 2014 and thereafter returned in 2019 with a stronger mandate and a bigger majority in parliament. Mr. Panda, what is your reading of the second term of the BJP government so far? With regard to the economy, there have been quite a few laws and policies which were passed in the last few years or so, but the most widely discussed among them are demonetization and the goods and services tax. Mr. Panda, what has been the progress which you witnessed on the ground as a result of both of these policies? And in the same context, going by your experience as a parliamentarian, what do you think is the most effective policy measure to curb inequality in India? There's been much said about this particular issue, both nationally and internationally. But what do you believe is the true intention behind the farm laws? And what would you say to opposition parties and the farmer groups who are questioning it? From a health point of view, it really has been one of the most tumultuous and turbulent years that we've ever witnessed. And given the scale of the coronavirus crisis, I was wondering what your view was on the government's handling of the pandemic so far. And finally, I was hoping you could reflect on some of your experiences with the BJP so far. What makes the party such a formidable force in elections? And as a follow-up to that, and keeping the broader picture of the ongoing elections in mind, what do you think is the biggest problem with politics in India today? And if you were to think about it from a 10-year perspective and extrapolate current trends, what would you say is your overall vision for politics and the economy?
Hello and namaste. This is Jay Panda and it's a pleasure to be participating in my first Swellcast. This second term of the Narendra Modi government started off with a bang in 2019 with an increased mandate, which for the second time in 2 elections undid the conventional wisdom that India could only have coalition governments and has consolidated a governing majority for implementing many long-delayed policy issues. 2019 saw several such policies implemented by the Indian government, which had been pending for a long time and had broad support across the political spectrum for decades. Although in light of their implementation, there have been hypocritical reversals by some in opposition. And subsequently, over the last little more than a year, the Modi government has done extremely well in tackling the pandemic, what had originally seemed a doomsday-like scenario when around the world experts predicted the collapse of India with its less than stellar health infrastructure. India has in fact done remarkably well, better than most other nations, with one of the lowest rates of mortality, and has taken the lead in helping out dozens of other nations with vaccines and other medicines. In the process, India has created immense new capacities, not just in the pharmaceutical sector with vaccines, but also in terms of manufacturing ventilators, PPE kits, and many other aspects. India is seen as having competently handled the COVID pandemic around the world, but even more importantly, within the country. Prime Minister Modi is one of the rare global leaders whose popularity, already very high, has surged even higher during the past 1 year, as evidenced by many opinion polls. The landmark policies of demonetization and GST, the goods and services tax, have been relentlessly attacked by an unprincipled opposition in India. But the reality is quite different. For a very long time, experts, including most economists, have been worrying that the vast percentage of the Indian economy which was unofficial, called the black economy, which was not within the tax net, was a huge shortcoming for the 21st century and for a country that aspired to become an economic superpower. It required a jolt to the system, which had been done before. Demonetization had been done before, but the problem of unaccountable, untraceable funds flows throughout the country had only increased. This jolt did cause disruptions, but that was expected. Unlike what many opposition claimed, the reduction in growth was for 2 quarters, which was exactly what had been predicted, not just by government, but by almost all international financial experts. And then the growth did pick up again. That jolt to the unauthorized, unaccounted cash economy needed to be followed up by deeper, more fundamental reform. And that is what GST was. Now, the GST is something that, again, had broad support and had been debated for more than 2 decades, but it required political will to implement, to create a single market. Now, this is very important because although India gained independence back in 1947, it was not a single economic market. And so it was far more difficult for example, for a truck full of goods to move from one state to another state in India than for it to be exported to another country, which was bizarre. The implementation of the GST was akin to something that the US saw well over a century ago in the Interstate Commerce Act, and has had a similar effect in boosting the global economy by taking advantage of the scale of our nation. The GST too had a lot of teething troubles, which was only to be expected when you disrupt and reform a well-entrenched but suboptimal system of cash transactions which were outside the tax net. But since then, the system has been improved, has taken feedback from consumers and businesses, and has evolved into something that has eradicated most of the hindrances and flaws while retaining all the benefits. The proof of the pudding is that the states which were complaining about the GST implementation since the beginning no longer do so, because they have all seen vastly increased revenues. And for the past 5 months now, the GST revenues have been more than rupees 100,000 crores every month, and keep on setting new records, putting India well on its way to becoming an economic superpower. The agriculture reform laws that were recently passed in India have been advocated by virtually every economist, and especially agri-economists, for half a century. And those who are opposing it, especially opposition political parties, are indulging in the worst form of hypocrisy and cynicism to try and take political advantage of something, despite the fact that they had themselves supported these reforms and in fact had made written commitments to it in their election manifestos. The background is as follows. Back in the 1950s and 60s, when India had food shortages and depended on aid from countries like the United States, these socialistic laws were implemented, putting controls on farmers, restricting them from selling their produce to whoever they wished, so that they could only sell within their own district to government-appointed agents. Since then, and especially due to the Green Revolution, India has for half a century now become a hugely surplus grain producer. We have an opposite problem now, where millions of tons of food grains, especially rice and wheat, are stored. We are running out of storage space, and a lot is lost to wastage and rats eating them. And thus, for several decades now, experts have been arguing for reforming these laws, just in the same manner that the overall Indian economy has been deregulated. They have been asking for farmers to be set free to sell their produce to whoever they want and to wherever they want, not just in their own district. The resistance to these reforms have mostly come from middlemen who had dominated the agriculture trade in India and were a big cause of both why farmers got poor returns while consumers had to pay high prices in the market for agricultural products. The resistance also is limited to a specific geographical area, and farmers in the vast majority of India have no problem with these laws. One thing that the media does not report accurately is that in well over 90% of the states, there are simply no agitations against the new laws. These agitations are limited to a very specific area north of Delhi. There are some genuine farmers in these agitations who have concerns about the MSP, or the minimum support price, which was a subsidy given to them to grow grains, again going back to the shortage era. But to ensure that these disruptions don't affect them, the Modi government, including Prime Minister Modi himself, have specifically and repeatedly assured that the MSP system will continue wherever the farmers want to continue using the subsidies. So this provides the best of both worlds. Those farmers who want the freedom to grow what they want, to sell to whom they want, wherever they want, are now free to do so. Those who want to continue on the old system of dependence on the middlemen and to continue getting the grain subsidy have the option to do so. There is absolutely no logic to any of the opposition to these farm laws. And if you dig deeper, you will see that a lot of the agitation is motivated by elements who are simply against the Modi government broadly and not on any particular issue. this is just yet another occasion for them to be hypocritical and cynical and create agitations. I've ended up talking about the Indian government's handling of the pandemic in the first question. I'll just mention that India has done and continues to do better than most countries in handling the pandemic, in terms of containing the damage, in terms of responding to the situation by developing new capacities, and in terms of scaling up its abilities to not just help Indians, but to help millions of people in dozens of other countries. Over a decades-long journey, and now especially under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, the BJP has become the world's largest political party with 180 million members. This has happened through clear vision, dedication, and hard work by generations of earlier leaders. There are several things that distinguishes the BJP from other political parties in India today. One of them is our internal motto of nation first, party second, and self last. There really is an inculcation of genuine dedication to the improvement of the nation. Whereas other political parties probably have these priorities in reverse, with their first priority being to a particular family or individual, and concern about the nation coming last. The BJP is also the most transparent and accessible party, where even someone of humble origins, such as our current Prime Minister, can go to the highest levels of the party and government. The biggest problem in politics in India, I think, has been nepotism. It started after independence, because during the independence movement, parties were created on ideologies, and a great many leaders came up from the ground up. That has changed, and you've seen most parties run by individuals from specific families. That has led to a distortion in their priorities, and very obvious policies in the national interest supported by the vast majority of people are often frustrated because of various vested interests. As a result, you've seen over several decades the proliferation of parties dedicated to regions and to castes, and even increasingly with blatantly questionable objectives in terms of equal rights to all citizens, as the Constitution guarantees. The BJP is dedicated to the vision of an India that is experiencing a renaissance and the world's largest democracy as a republic that is governed by the guiding principles of our Constitution. In the coming years and decades, India will see a resurgence in economic and cultural terms, something which is already well underway. Within the coming generation, India will be a solid middle-income country with an overall economy that will be the third largest in the world. And its role in the world is that of a benevolent economic power that works in partnerships with other nations, especially with other democracies.
I just want to say in conclusion that the main goal of Swell is to have authentic conversations with the most informed voices about issues of global concern. Mr. Panda, you've given us a lot of insights into important topics and effectively highlighted where your party stands on crucial issues, as well as your personal vision for politics. It has been a real pleasure speaking with you, and I want to thank you for giving us your time and patiently answering all the questions. I hope to host you back on the Think Tank's Wellcast soon. Thanks again, and I wish you the very best.